Namaste and welcome to Asha USA's monthly speaker series. In 2024, our theme is Let's Start the Conversation. In this series, we will hear from different speakers who talk about important issues we face as immigrants in our lives and how we approach them. This February, our session is called Being a Caregiver. Lessons learned, and we are going to have a heart-to-heart chat with author Savita Harjani. Savita Harjani Hello, Savita.
Good morning, Siley. Thank you so much for having me on your show and listening to my journey and giving me this opportunity to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Savita left her job as an attorney to care for her mother in India, where she spent 5 years of her life. This is a beautiful memoir, and she talks about this introspective journey that she took during her time as a mother's caregiver. Her thoughts are not only helpful for caregivers, but also to anybody navigating daily setbacks. So just to give you a little more background about Savita, she's from Bombay, which is now Mumbai, India. And she relocated to US at the age of 20. Living in Minneapolis for over 20 years, she studied law at Hamlin University, graduating in 94. And she began her legal journey at Thomson Reuters, later joining the high-tech startup Burmai, and then transitioned to her own strategic legal management consulting. In 2016, Savita paused her professional life and moved to India to take care of her mother. After completing her tenure as a caregiver in 2020, Savita retired from active practice of law. She is now exploring her second career as a writer, starting with her debut work, Postcards from Within, which is her memoir. She also does hospice care volunteer work at an organization called LifeSpark. So thank you so much, Savita, for being here. Your book is amazing, and I have been reading it and enjoying every page. I have so many questions for you, but let's start. I think I would love for you to start by reciting a poem you have at the beginning of the book. So we would love if you can read the poem Role Reversal. And I'm going to show everybody a picture so they know what we are talking about.
Siley, thank you for that very warm introduction and your kind words about Postcards from Within. I am happy to start by reading the poem Role Reversal, page 5 of the book. Role reversal. Watching a parent fade is the opposite of watching a child grow. Ma fades and extinguishes a little every day. She is my baby now. Ma experienced a labor of joy when she brought me into this world. I experienced a labor of sadness as I helped her exit this world. When I was little, Ma exclaimed, "Oh, look, she can stand on her own now." When Ma was 85, I exclaimed, "Oh, Ma can't stand on her own anymore." Ma said about me, "She ate her first solid food today. She is growing up so fast." I said about Ma, "She can't eat solid foods anymore. Let's try liquids. Maybe she'll be able to swallow." Ma was so excited. My baby is responding. She is starting to understand language. I was so sad. I think Ma is starting to lose comprehension. She is staring at me blankly. Ma called my father and gushed. "Our baby has said her first word." I called my brother and said, "Our mother has forgotten her first word." Ma exclaimed, "Yay, Poopy's on On her own for the first time, I asked Ma, is it time to have a conversation about diapers? Ma exclaimed with joy, it is so exciting to watch her grow every day. I whispered with pain, it is so sad to watch her extinguish a little every day. Ma said thoughtfully, before you know it, she will be all grown up and will leave me. I said with grief and finality, before you know it, she will have extinguished and left me. Thank you.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you, Sally.
Yeah, I have read it so many times, and still I get goosebumps when I hear you say it out loud. So,
I'm humble.
so you bring out a beautiful fact that as we grow up, we see our parents age. And if we do not see them for months or years together, as now we live in a different country on a different continent, every time we see them, we realize they're aging. And that in our culture, it is imbibed in our minds that there will be a role reversal and we will need to be there for them when they need caregiving. But
Right.
as we all know, it is a hard thing to do if you are so far away. And of course, each person's circumstances are so different. So, how was that decision for you? How did you make that choice of caregiving?
Yeah, Siley. Like you said, I moved to the United States. I was fairly young. I was 20 years old. But, and at the time, my parents were young and vibrant. But from that moment on, at the back of my mind, I always had this thought, what will happen when they become vulnerable and need my support? In the back of my mind, always imagine that. How will we manage? How will I manage? And I suspect I'm not alone in this. I'm sure many of us first generation immigrants who have this two continent, two country issue always wonder with some worry, with some anxiety, what will happen when that time comes. And my parents were amazing people. They took really great care of me. I lost my father very early on, and my mother managed without him, without her children for 20 some years. But during that entire time, I just knew I would take care of her. I did not know how, I did not know when, but I knew I would. And my daily prayer used to be, God, when the time comes, please don't make me choose between my husband and my mother. I still get emotional every time I think about that. But it is a real challenge. And I must say that life was so kind to me, to us, that I had my husband's 100% support. Together, we decided we will take care of my mother, and we were committed. And so, to answer your question, the decision was an easy one. The execution of it was not. It was a very challenging journey, but we were committed.
So, caregiving is a multifaceted role, right? And we hear so much about how hard it is, how tired you can get.
Mhm.
And once you were there and doing this job of caregiving or being in this role as a caregiver for your mother 24/7, you talk about having this epiphany about choice, right? That you had made this choice and you put it into words saying, I choose, therefore I do.
Yeah,
So tell us a little bit about more. I think on page 51, you talk about it very beautifully.
right. Would you like me to read that?
Sure.
Or
Yeah. If you want to read part of it, that would be wonderful.
ah, um, breaking it up might be a bit interesting for me. Let's see.
Mhm.
Um, should I just read it?
Yeah. Go ahead.
The job of a caregiver is without breaks. I have not stepped outside the house for about 3 weeks. I have no professional or social interaction. Some people have called me stupid for abandoning everything and being in India. Some have called me a hero for abandoning everything and being in India. I am neither. Why am I doing this? I am doing this because I love my mother. I am doing this because it is the right thing to do. Is there such a thing as a right thing to do? I do not know. What makes it the right thing to do for me? Not doing the right thing that I believe to be right will make me so guilt ridden that I will not be able to live with myself. The absence of guilt and presence of love makes it the right thing for me to do. But I am so tired. Yes, I am so tired. I am discovering that managing guilt and the presence of love are insufficient reasons to do what I am doing. I am learning that what separates a commitment from a should do is choice. I am committed, and short of physical inability to perform by reason of death or disease, I am going to do this. Fatigue, exhaustion, irritation, isolation, loneliness, stress, depression. I see you, but you shall not deter me from my mission because I choose to do this. I do this not because it is the right thing to do, but because I choose to do it. An epiphany. I'm finally starting to get the distinction of choice. It is pretty powerful. Without choice, one cannot accomplish anything because the reason for doing things will always change or become redundant, or the cost of carrying on will become overly burdensome. At some point, one will give up unless one is doing something out of choice. I choose, therefore I do. So it was a whole thought process that I went through. That why am I doing this? And like I said in this passage, I analyzed because of course I loved my mother and that was the right thing to do. But the cost was also very heavy. I had put my relationship on the line. I was away from my profession, from my social life. But it was a choice I made and I was committed and I was going to do that.
Yeah, and it is a choice as well as a privilege, right? Not
Absolutely.
everybody can do that, that just leave their job and their life here and then go back.
Right.
And caregiving itself is so demanding, and it is like on the job training, right? There's no manual as to, okay, this is how you go, this is step one, this is step two, and it will be so different for each one of us.
Right.
So how did you approach, especially being away from India for so long? You had not lived as an adult in India. You
Right.
came here when you were 20. So going back and not only doing what needs to be done, but navigating the system back home in India, where you do not know the ins and outs, as they say. So, how did you, go through those times, or what challenges did you come across?
Right. India is a challenging place that it's frustrating. And when I got there, I realized I really did not know how to function. And I had to develop that skill because that skill set was entirely missing in my repertoire. Simple things like getting internet installed in the house, to going to a bank, which was a whole day job, to learning the healthcare system. It was all very, very challenging. But I had an epiphany. I mean, this whole journey was full of insights and epiphanies for me because I realized what I was doing was I was expecting India to function as things function in the United States. And that was the disconnect. The disconnect was in expectations versus reality. And why should India function like the United States? It's a different country. And once I realized that, I was still very frustrated, but it gave me momentum to move forward, to get past that, and to say, okay, this is a different country. I have to learn the rules of how I can manage here. And that was really huge. And so once I got past that, it was easier to navigate. Speaking specifically to healthcare, um, that is a whole different system again. And doctors are really, really busy and don't give you much time. If you think doctors don't have time here, doctors in India do not have time. I think maybe it's population pressures. Whenever we were in waiting rooms, it was like one human upon another, upon another. It was just always chaotic. And regardless of whether it was a 5-star corporate hospital or a little local clinic, it was always very hard to get time from doctors. And I think culturally, doctors in India don't like to tell patients what is their situation or what do they have.
Hmm.
They will diagnose, they will write something really illegibly, prescribe you something, and send you on your way.
Hmm.
For me, that was unacceptable because I was taking care of my mom. So I learned to do research. I would make my questions very detailed, and I would ask my questions, which were mostly ignored, but I would not leave without learning how to take care of my mother. And in time, I think every time the doctors would see me coming, they would probably brace themselves and roll their eyes. Here she comes again. But it was my job. I was her advocate. I needed to know how to take care of her. So I learned to do that. And um, the other thing was that hygiene and, just cleanliness in hospitals
Hmm.
was an issue. When mom was admitted several times during this tenure, I would clean everything. Even when we came to a brand new room, cleaned up, I would clean the toilet. I would, because she was so susceptible to infections.
Hmm.
And I could write a whole manual on how cleanliness was an issue over there and what they can do.
Hmm.
But that's a different story. But having said this, there were so many challenges. But I write in my book also that how can a place so frustrating be so endearing? And that is India.
Hmm.
I love India, regardless of how challenging it is to navigate. And, I built a team and infrastructure. Nobody can go at it alone.
Yeah.
And the fruit vendor and the vegetable vendor, the nurses we hired, the milk guy, this was my community, my network. And they
Hmm.
all supported me and brought joy in times of illness and disease. So, yeah, navigating India was a challenge, but I think I learned a lot. And I'm
Yeah.
very, very grateful for that experience.
As they say, it takes a village, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
so we talk about caregiver burnout, right? Because though you have this attitude, a very positive attitude, I'm sure you had times when you were really overwhelmed. So how did you deal with that?
Oh, did I ever have caregiver burnout? It was very, very real. Caregiver burnout is so real. I, my husband was here in the United States. I shared a lot with him, but I did not want to share all my struggles with him because he had enough on his plate. I did not want to share many of my struggles with my mother because I never wanted her to feel like a burden because she wasn't. But my struggles were real. I did not set out to write postcards from within, but I needed an outlet because I couldn't say it out. I started writing it. So I started journaling as an outlet. And as I didn't realize at the time that it was part of self care or it was therapeutic, it was just very instinctive for me. I can't say this to anyone, but I need it out of my head. So I'm going to write it down. So Dear Life sort of became the years that my unspoken words fell on.
Hmm.
And so journaling and writing was a big thing. One time I remember, this is an anecdote. Mom was having some issues, and I went to her doctor alone. And I was having such a hard day that I said one kind word, and I'm going to go to pieces. And I sat down in that chair in her office, and she said, "How are you?" And I had a meltdown. And there was no kind word. She just said, "How are you?" And and she told me, you've got caregiver burnout. You need to take care of yourself and replenish yourself.
Hmm.
So another coping mechanism that my husband and I came up with is like we tried to make the most of what we had. And he travels a fair bit for work. And anytime he had a conference in Europe, he'd be there for 3, 4 days. And so I would take 3, 4 days. It was halfway from India, much easier than getting over here. We
Hmm.
started dating again, and that was really exciting. And it rejuvenated me, re-energized me, and it created excitement in our lives. When is the next trip? What are we doing? So um, I want to say that self-care is hugely important, because if you don't take care of yourself, you will not be able to take care of your loved one. And self-care comes with guilt. It
Hmm.
comes with I don't have time issues,
Hmm.
but not taking care of self is counterproductive and counterintuitive. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, in your book, you write about how personal growth comes from painful experiences. And in places, it seems you turned the hard times into teaching moments for yourself. And
Mhm.
by writing this in this book for us as well. So, can you talk a little bit about what are some things you learned about yourself as you went on this journey?
Absolutely. You know, like you say, one place in the book I write, adversities are worthy of my undying gratitude because they did transform me. And this time with my mother was an absolute privilege. And it taught me that not all challenging times are bad. They're just tough, you know, and they can even be the best of times. This time with my mother was priceless, and I would not change a moment of it. But it was also very, very challenging. And some of the things that I discovered about myself was that I found out that I am stronger and I have more courage than I gave myself credit for, because I had to rise. I was committed to that. And you just have to get through it. When you don't have a choice, you deal with what you have to deal with and you come out the other side. I also learned that fear is omnipresent.
Hmm.
And but you can acknowledge it and move past it. Because if you are unable to move past it, that doesn't solve anything. And the incentive was my mom. It was her health, it was her life. So I found ways to move past it. And another thing I discovered about myself was I have the ability to commit 100% to something given the right incentives. And this was my mom. And no matter what, I was going to see her through. So, so those were some of the things that I learned about myself, which were pleasant discoveries.
Yeah. And you also reframe some of the things that were happening. Like, for example, you talk about how every day that you and your mom had to spend that afternoon during her dialysis, you describe it as a bonding time for mother and daughter, right? Which in a like generally people would think of it as such a difficult time or, be impatient about it. But the way you describe it, so not only about yourself, but looking how to look at hardship or a hard time in a
Right.
different way.
Absolutely. That, she was on 16-hour daily dialysis. And that 1 hour in the afternoon was when we had to manually drain her without going into the details of the process. It was an hour where we just had to be with each other.
Hmm.
And, she taught me so much about me, about her, about our family, about my ancestors, about music.
Hmm.
She was a very, very intelligent and thoughtful woman. And to have a conversation with her about anything under the sun was just such a delightful privilege. And I learned so much about her.
There are a lot of things in this book. I would like to say that anybody who wants to read this book, if we just read the topic and the description and what it is about, people think, oh, this might be a very serious book, a lot of strong emotions, negative emotions. I don't want to get into that. In fact, I had a friend who just saw the cover and said, oh, is it about mom and her relationship? I'm going to get very emotional. I don't think I'm ready to read it yet. Now, after reading the book, I want to tell that friend and everybody else that though it is about that relationship and that time in your life when it was really hard, this is really about you talking to yourself the way everybody talks to themselves, but there's so much to learn from it. So I would highly recommend anybody to not judge the book by its cover, as they say, but really read it. I would love for you to read us another poem you have in the book. It's on page 141, and it is called Life is Teaching and I'm Learning.
Sally, thank you so much for that. It really, really humbles me that you have been able to relate to my book in that way, in the way you describe. Um, an author couldn't ask for more. So thank you. And so page 141.
Yeah.
So this poem is called Life is Teaching and I Am Learning, Part 2. What is life trying to teach me? Learn to stay in the moment. Do not compare yourself to others. There is no substitute for hard work. You may be able to fool others, but not yourself. Wishful thinking is a waste of time. Regrets are a waste of time. Death is inevitable. You can only do your best and no more. Guilt does not substitute for responsibility. Jealousy and anger are toxic. Everyone has their own cross to bear. You cannot carry theirs for them. The ostrich strategy of burying your head in the sand does not work. If you are not your word, you are nothing. Tough, that is a tough curriculum. I hope I make it. And Sally, as I read through each of these, I haven't looked at this poem in a bit. I can actually pinpoint the moments that inspired that particular thought that I compiled into this poem.
Mhm.
And a lot of these, this is describing the human condition. Um, cliches are words, is a word that is oftentimes defined as commonplace and trite. And a lot of this is people have heard this over and over again. But when I add my own layer of personal experience to this, it becomes authentic to my experience.
Mhm.
And it remains cliched no more for me. And so I wrote these on different days, different events, inspired some of these musings, and then I compiled them into this poem.
Yeah, thank you. That is so profound. And yes, that is a tough curriculum, and we hope we all make it. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Savita, for having a conversation with us today. And I'm going to share your book one more time. So
Yeah.
whoever is listening, if they want the details. So this is the book. Um, it is published by Beaver's Pond Press, and
Right.
it is available either through Itasca Books or on Amazon.com. And Savita, I wish you all the best, and I really hope you are writing and continuing to write, because I myself would love to read your future books.
Oh, Sally, you're so kind. Thank you. Can I take a moment to say something to your
Yes.
viewers and listeners?
Yeah.
I I just want to say that caregiving is a universal story and a universal journey. And our specific stories and the characters in our stories may be different, but I just want them to know that I know how challenging it is, because it is a challenging journey. And sometimes it just helps to know that there is someone out there who knows what it feels like. And actually, by some account, there are 53 million American caregivers. So, yet we feel alone on our journey. So, I hope that readers may find a shared experience and feel less alone on their solitary journeys. And I want them to be proud of themselves for choosing to be caregivers. And I wish them the best, and I wish you the best. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Savita.
Thank you.